power does not always collapse when it is weakest. Sometimes it collapses when it is most convinced of its own image. In the 17th century, Spain did not wake each morning fearing rebellion or dissolution. It woke to rituals of precedence, to carefully maintained hierarchies, to the language of universal monarchy still spoken as if it described the present tense. The contradiction was not between power and failure, but between authority as it was performed and authority as it was becoming. At the opening of the 1600s, Spain governed an empire without precedent in scale. Castile and Aragon had been bound to a single crown. Naples, Milan, Sicily, the Spanish Netherlands, vast territories in the Americas, and claims stretching across oceans, all answered formally to Madrid. Silver from Potosi crossed the Atlantic in fleets. Spanish tercios had defined European warfare for a century. The monarchy spoke in the language of divine mandate and Catholic guardianship. To appear diminished was not merely a political risk, it was an existential one. The terrain of authority was concrete and exacting. The crown's revenues flowed through Castile, already overburdened by taxation. War was not episodic but continuous, against the Dutch rebels in the Low Countries, against France, against England, against the Ottoman presence in the Mediterranean. Each conflict demanded visibility. Armies had to be seen, fortresses had to be held, titles had to be defended. Prestige was not ornamental, it was treated as the scaffolding of legitimacy itself. Yet beneath the surface coherence, the system had begun to harden. Spain's economy relied heavily on American silver, which masked structural weakness rather than correcting it. Inflation rose steadily, hollowing domestic production. The crown borrowed aggressively from foreign bankers, converting future authority into immediate display. Multiple royal bankruptcies were declared not as admissions of failure, but as tactical pauses, mechanisms to preserve the appearance of command while deferring its costs. Authority narrowed its field of vision. Decisions were filtered through councils that prized orthodoxy over adaptation. The monarchy feared deviation more than exhaustion. To relinquish a territory, to concede a title, to reduce a military presence, was interpreted not as strategy, but as confession. Prestige became a fixed obligation rather than a negotiable resource. This logic shaped Spain's most consequential choices. The war in the Dutch provinces, already draining by the late 16th century, persisted long after its original rationale dissolved. The objective shifted from restoration to demonstration. Victory mattered less than refusal to withdraw. Each additional campaign hardened the assumption that withdrawal itself would unravel the imperial image elsewhere. The same pattern repeated across domains. Naval power was maintained beyond fiscal capacity. Court ceremony expanded even as provincial infrastructure decayed. The expulsion of the Moriscos in 1609 removed a productive population to assert religious and political uniformity, sacrificing economic resilience to reinforce symbolic control. Authority chose coherence over capacity, mistaking internal consistency for strength. The monarchy did not miscalculate in ignorance. It miscalculated within a framework that treated reputation as non-negotiable. Spain's rulers understood the costs accumulating beneath their decisions. What they resisted was the idea that power could survive visible contraction. Prestige was not merely defended, it was protected from revision. Over time, the system's responses grew more rigid. Taxation increased in Castile because Castile was loyal enough to endure it. Peripheral territories were preserved because losing them would signal weakness, even as defending them accelerated depletion at the center. Authority redistributed pain toward the obedient, preserving the appearance of universal command while concentrating strain where resistance was least. As the 17th century progressed, external pressure intensified. France adapted faster, reorganizing its finances and military. The Dutch built commercial networks that outpaced Spain's extraction-based model. England learned to project power at sea with fewer symbolic encumbrances. Spain, by contrast, remained bound to an inherited image of itself as the arbiter of European order. The Fronde in France and internal revolts in Catalonia and Portugal in the 1640s exposed the limits of Spain's posture. These were not sudden eruptions but delayed reactions to sustained overreach. When Portugal broke away in 1640, the loss was not only territorial, it was a public fracture in the narrative of inevitability. Authority could still command armies, but it could no longer convincingly claim that obedience followed naturally from its existence. Even then, the crown hesitated to recalibrate. The 30 Years' War drew Spain deeper into commitments framed as defenses of dynastic honor. Military engagements continued despite dwindling manpower and credit. Each decision to persist was rational within the system's internal logic. Each preserved prestige for another season while narrowing the margin for recovery. By mid-century, the signs were unmistakable. The defeat at Rocroi in 1643 did not end Spain's military relevance, but it punctured the myth of invincibility that had insulated authority from revision. The tercios, once symbols of disciplined dominance, became reminders of an era that could no longer be reproduced at the same cost. Prestige remained visible, but its substance thinned. Here, the fracture deepened. Authority faced a choice it had long deferred: adapt the image to the capacity or continue sacrificing capacity to sustain the image. Spain chose continuity. The monarchy reasserted ceremonial grandeur, titles multiplied, court life intensified. These were not distractions. They were assertions that the system still governed the terms of recognition. Yet power under pressure tends to mistake duration for control. As long as rituals persisted, authority interpreted survival as validation. The erosion beneath was quieter: depopulated regions, neglected agriculture, reliance on foreign credit, administrative inertia. None of these announced collapse. They accumulated as residue. The late 17th century did not bring sudden disintegration. It brought endurance without renewal. Spain remained an empire in form, a monarchy in ceremony, a great power in memory. What it lacked was elasticity. Prestige had become a constraint rather than an asset, dictating choices that narrowed future options. This is where the deeper cost emerges. By treating prestige as indivisible from authority, Spain eliminated the possibility of strategic retreat. Power could not be resized without being negated. Every concession threatened the entire framework, so no concession was made in time. The monarchy continued to govern, to issue decrees, to collect tribute. But its decisions increasingly responded to the preservation of status rather than the conditions of survival. Authority still spoke, but it listened less. It still commanded, but it adapted rarely. The story does not resolve into moral failure or inevitability. Spain did not decline because it lacked intelligence or courage. It declined because its conception of authority could not accommodate visible reduction. Prestige, once a tool of expansion, hardened into a rule of action. Survival required flexibility. Legitimacy demanded display. As the century closed, power had not vanished. It had narrowed. The empire persisted, but its center of gravity shifted away from innovation toward remembrance. Authority remained convinced that control was possible, provided the image was preserved long enough. What eroded Spain was not a single defeat or decision, but a sustained refusal to reinterpret strength. Prestige was chosen again and again, not as vanity, but as necessity. And in choosing it, authority constrained its own future, mistaking the maintenance of appearance for the preservation of power. If you found meaning here, you're welcome to explore more on Timeless Questions, where we examine history not for answers, but for understanding.